Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Ravona. I am a clinical nutritionist. I would like to share some of my trade secrets with you. How can you switch to a conscious, healthy diet and at the same time not to go nuts? Well, before you step on this path, it is very important to answer a few questions. Needs to be answered. Why do I need this? And question number 2, do I or somebody else really want this? Does someone from immediate or distant family want this? Or do I want this? What do you need to do this? So that your brain clearly understands that this is your own request. If it understands this, it will be much easier for it to introduce some new habits into your life later on. Subsequently, it is also important to remember that our body is an array of billions of cells. And what we fill our body with in the future will become building material for it. Since everything starts with a cell, it is important to understand that first comes the cell, then the tissue of our body is formed from the cell, i.e., it is our skin, our organs. Then a system of organs is formed from our organs. Our organism is formed from this organ system. To make it much easier for us to introduce some of our own rules into our life, we need not set a limit, but instead introduce new rules to ourselves. I think oftentimes you noticed in yourself such a pattern, when the more limits you set for yourself, the more often you want to break away from them. Therefore, it is important to come to an agreement with yourself, to let yourself understand that you are not your enemy, that you support yourself, that you are your own supporter. And this can be expressed by the fact that you will simply introduce some new rules into your life. Our brain is a very lazy fellow, so it is very important to explain to yourself and to your brain why and for what you need to eat scrambled eggs and avocado toast and not Nesquik pads with banana milk, for example. What is it for? For your brain to have a clear understanding of why it needs to do this anyway. Because if you just say to yourself, I am obese or I need to lose weight, these are not the case for it. It does not understand this. It will say, I'm good, let's leave it as it is, okay? It's also important to remember that our brain is very lazy, very, very lazy, and it will strive to spend as little effort as possible on its function. Look, you reside in certain living conditions, eat certain foods, thus you form certain neural connections. You know how to ride the same bus every day. You have so-called well-trodden path. To introduce some new dietary regimen, new rules in your life, you need little but regular effort. Next, you need to figure out how to get more pleasure and satisfaction with your new actions. To do this, ask yourself, what do I need to do in order to do this more often? Let me give you an example. I am a person who does not like to play sports. In general, I hate sports. But I chose yoga for myself. And so I thought, what should I do for myself in order to do yoga more often? I bought a fancy mat, a cool uniform, candles. I created a pleasant environment for myself. And I wanted to return to this practice as often as possible. And it worked. Let's move on. Consistency is a major factor in teaching brain new skills. That is, our brain needs to form a new neural connection. For it to form, you need to constantly do certain actions. You know this story that we form new habits in 21 days. In fact, this is a standard number. For some, it takes more days. For others, it takes less. You focus purely on yourself. But the most important thing is constant, regular actions for your brain to form new neural connections. It's also important to remember that small efforts are much easier for us than major ones. That is, you must determine for yourself point A and point B. In between, you must set for yourself small, let's say, goals, thanks to which you will understand that you are moving forward. It is not necessary to immediately go from point A to point B. it is very stressful for our body and brain. More often than not, when we do this, a vicious circle begins, when we start something and then abruptly quit from it. Therefore, it is important to set such small goals for yourself. Essentially, this is one of the foundations of our 21-day marathon, in which we rely on this rule. With that in mind, we are slowly, very slowly introducing new rules of nutrition, new habits, so that it would be easier for you to bring it into your life later. Thus, the basic rules of the dietary regimen that will help you gradually adapt to new realities. Rule number 1, solid intervals. What does it mean? This means we have our main meals and we are used to snacking in between. Also, we often forget, or someone does not know, that there are liquid calories. Tea with sugar, coffee with milk, juice, some kind of sweet water, all this is considered liquid calories. This all is considered a snack. Water alone is not considered a snack because water is believed to have no calories. Therefore, we must have intervals between our main meals. The main meal should be hearty so that we don't feel like eating. It is also important to remember that the more snacks, the less wholesome food you will eat in your main meal. It works in such a way that when you snack, you reduce your feeling of hunger, and then in the main meal, you eat a lot less healthy and good food. Now, I am going to share some hacks on how to get even more pleasure from food and a new diet. Do not work at the dinner table. Do not dine at the desk. Why? Because when you come to the dinner table, you have an incentive to start eating. You start to produce enzymes. And if you are used to having lunch all the time at your desk, then you will be confused. That is, you have to sit down at the dinner table and be hungry. You should develop a strong neural connection. I mean, do not confuse. At the dinner table, we eat. At the desk, we work. Number 2, dietary regimen is the most important thing in improving your health. Genetically, we tend not to reduce calories, but to limit access to food. Meaning that we have already been brought up in a culture in which we limit ourselves in calories. But it is better if you limit yourself in food. For example, you will not eat 5 times a day, but 3 times a day, as it is more appropriate. Number 3, next, don't bargain with yourself. If you decide that you want to switch to a different diet or want to eat differently, just do it. Number 4, don't watch food porn. We have all seen mesmerizing, mouth-watering commercials or some beautiful pictures all over. Try to avoid this. That is, when you do not eat food, go about your business. Number 5, do not prohibit but introduce the rules. This is what we talked about at the very beginning. Our brain perceives bans as something that we want to violate. Therefore, come to an agreement with yourself. Try the rules for yourself, and so it will be easier for you to move on. Number 6, appetite is a sign of health. It is very cool if you learn to eat precisely for the feeling of hunger and fullness. Therefore, if you are full and you have food in your plate, this does not mean that you need to finish eating. It means that you need to put it aside and stop eating it. That's all. The feeling of fullness is your main reference point. It also works with the feeling of hunger. You should only focus on it if you feel that you are hungry, you eat. Number 7, don't reinforce your habits and they'll fade away. It can be difficult at first when adjusting to new eating habits. So try to support yourself and reinforce your old habits. Rule number 2 is breakfast. How and what we eat for breakfast will, in many ways, determine how our metabolism behaves throughout the day. There is such an indicator, or rather a hormone, insulin. It regulates blood sugar levels, and how it behaves throughout the day will determine our metabolism. And we need to start it exactly during breakfast because this is the base point from which all our metabolic processes begin. Also, another cool life hack. When we have sunshine, there is a cool, tasty, hearty breakfast. Then later, it gives a very awesome result. We feel great and we sleep well. We have a lot of energy during the day. How can we ensure that we feel full for a long time throughout the day? 1. It is recommended to eat proteins and fats. They give a long-lasting feeling of fullness. If you only eat oatmeal for breakfast, then it will provoke such wave-like and sharp fluctuations in insulin. We do not want it. We need our metabolism to kickstart gradually in the morning. Therefore, we add proteins and fats to our breakfast. Let's move on. 2. Breakfast should be hearty. We often drink a cup of coffee, eat a chocolate bar, and run about our business. But it is important that you eat heartily in the morning, right up to the feeling of satiety. 3. Breakfast is needed in the first hour after waking up. Why? Because it is in the first hour that our entire metabolism starts up and our entire hormonal system begins to function. Therefore, how you start your metabolism in the first hour after waking up will subsequently affect your entire day. 4. Bright sunlight. This is what I have already said. It will give you lots of energy, great sleep, and wellness. 5. As a dessert for breakfast, you can use berries, avocados, nuts, pieces of coconut, or your favorite fruit. Rule number 3. Dinner has to be 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, and the calorie content of dinner should be 20 to 30% of your daily ratio. Unfortunately, we are used to having dinner before bed. It is often an hour before bedtime. But it will be more appropriate and a lot healthier for our body to have a dinner 3 to 4 hours before bedtime. This is due to a certain work of our hormones, thanks to which we can generally fall asleep. What is recommended for dinner? These are vegetables, herbs, and fats. As fats, we can use avocado, oil, or some nuts. That is, it can be some kind of a salad made from warmed-up vegetables with the addition of fat, for example. Rule number 4. The number of meals should be optimally equal to 3. Previously, it was believed that we need to have 5 meals a day. This has now been revised. For a healthy person, these 3 meals are enough. For these 3 meals, we can get enough calories and nutrients, micro and macro elements. But if you are used to eating 5 times a day, then of course it will be more difficult for you to adapt to this diet. But you must remember that a hearty breakfast will set you upon the right metabolic vector, and it will be easier for you to tolerate without snacking. By this, I mean that 3 meals will be enough for you, and you will fill up and feel great. We tested this rule on the experience of our marathon participants who previously ate more than 3 times a day. The result turned out to be very cool. Indeed, if you have a very nice high in protein and fat breakfast, then you don't feel like snacking later. You do not have these sharp spikes in insulin in your blood. Well, the easiest way to learn and live in a new way is to choose mindfulness. Because the more consciously you approach your diet, your daily routine, your sleep, the easier it becomes for you to adapt and implement it into your own life. Therefore, if you are ready to introduce new habits into your life, gently and peacefully switch to a new type of nutrition to feel healthier, more energetic. Take part in our marathon, which lasts for 21 days, just so that you have time to form a new habit, and you can then, in the future, introduce it into your own life. You can find all the detailed information under this video. Thanks for watching the webinar. Goodbye.